Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. This video is a crash course on object-oriented programming. So in this video, we will cover all of the OOP concepts, including classes, objects, encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, and all of the other important things. I will teach you all of those concepts with a practical example, and we are going to build a complete application that I will show you in a minute. This video is brought to you by my own personal mission and effort to make programming accessible to everyone because it is truly one of those skills that can transform your career and your entire future. And if you're looking to take your programming skills even further so that you can start a successful career as a software developer, so that you can work from home and earn a high salary, I can also help you to achieve that goal. I have combined over 12 years of my academic experience and also work on many different projects, and I have created CodeBeauty Academy, which is a learning platform. It is designed to teach you career-ready skills through a practical program that you can complete in just a few months. It has over 200 video lessons covering everything that you need to know. You are going to work on real projects with other developers, and step by step, I will take you from beginner to expert. Many students who join the Academy get their first job even before completing the entire program, so you can be absolutely sure about the quality of this program. And I also invite you to try it out risk-free, so if you're not satisfied for any reason, you will get a full refund. If you're interested to join, check out the link in the description, and I will also leave a special discount code that you can use in order to save some money. Now let's dive into OOP, which is a crucial paradigm in programming, and the skills that you learn in this video, you can apply them to any other OOP language. So before we start writing any code, you first need to understand what is OOP and why it is important. OOP stands for Object-Oriented Programming, and it is approach in programming that helps us to represent real objects from real world in our programs. And that way, it helps us to solve real problems and create modern, useful applications that you and me use every day. Because, as I said, with OOP, we can represent real objects from real world together with their properties and their behaviors, and we can translate that into our applications. In this video, we are going to build an application with C#, but OOP principles and the logic that you learn are the same in all OOP languages, which means that principles that you learn in this video can be applied across all OOP languages such as C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, Python, PHP, Ruby, Swift, and many, many more languages. So now that you know that OOP is approach in programming that helps us to represent objects from real world in our applications, together with their properties and their behaviors, now the question is, what are the most important concepts in OOP? Two most important concepts in OOP are classes and objects, and they help us to represent entities from real world in our applications, together with their properties and their behaviors. A class serves as a blueprint, as a model, and a class tells us which properties and which behaviors that entity has, and then an object is a concrete instance of that class. Let me give you an example of what is class and what is an object. A class can be, for example, a person. Each person has certain properties. Each person needs to have name, age, birth country, weight, and so on. So that is a class. It's a blueprint. An object is a concrete instance of that class. For example, an object of class person can be me, with all of my properties. My name is Saldina, my age is 29, my birth country is Bosnia, and so on. Another object of class person can be you, with your name, your age, your birth country, and so on. And please let me know in the comment section, what are your properties? What is your name, age, and where are you watching this video from? I'm very interested to know the people who are watching my videos. So once more, a class serves as a blueprint or a model, and it describes what kind of properties and behaviors objects need to have, and then Objects are concrete instances of that class. Now, let me show you how this works on the application that we are going to build today. Here I have already finished application that we will later build together, and this application is used in order to manage bank accounts. In this grid, we already have two bank accounts. One is mine, this is owner name, account number, and then this is the balance of my bank account. And then another bank account is from Elon Musk. This is his account number and then his balance. And then also I have the option to create a new bank account. So let's say Bill Gates, and I say create account, so another bank account will be added. This is the owner, this is the account number, and then balance will initially be 0 because we have just created this account. And besides that, we also have these two buttons, option to deposit money and to withdraw money from bank account. So if I select, for example, my bank account and I say 100 and I click on deposit, that money will be deposited to my balance. Also, if I select another bank account, let's say Elon Musk, and I say 200 and I click on withdraw, that money will be withdrawn from his bank account. So this is an application that is very easy to use. It is very straightforward. It is not especially beautiful because I have not added any colors, I have not styled it in any way, but it is very functional. And in this video, we will learn how to build this application. So first, let's explain what is in the background of this application and how we can build it. So in the background, we have one class called bank account, and that class says that each bank account needs to have an owner, account number, and balance. Those are the properties of each bank account. And then also it needs to have certain behaviors. So we need to be able to create a bank account, we need to be able to deposit money and withdraw money from bank account. So that is an example of a class in our program. And as we said, class serves as a blueprint and it defines what kind of properties and behaviors objects need to have. In our case, class defines that each object needs to have owner, unique account number, and balance. Those are the properties. And then behaviors that bank accounts need to have is the ability to withdraw money, deposit money, and to create new bank account. And then objects of our class are these three instances here. They are concrete examples of bank account class. So this is the application that we are going to build together. And in order to build this application together with me, you will need to install Visual Studio 2022 or newer. Community version is completely free, and I will leave a link in the description that you can use to download it. And also you will need to install .NET Framework. My recommendation is that you install .NET Framework 8.0 because that is the newest version as of filming this video. You can also install some newer version depending on when you are watching the video. And also I will leave a link to download and install it in the description. So once you install those two, let's open our Visual Studio and let's build this application. So here is my Visual Studio. Let's click on Create New Project. Okay, and here we are going to create C# Windows Forms application. Make sure that you select C# and not some other language. So C# Windows Forms app, select that and click on Next. And here we will give the name to our application. Let's say Bank Accounts App, and then click on Next again. And here you will select your framework. For me, that is 8.0, and then click on Create. So here is our project, and initially we get this form called Form 1. And that is this empty form here. And if I start my application, that form will be started, but as you can see, it is currently completely empty because we still have not added anything to our form. So now let's do that. Let's add our controls, let's add our grid, buttons, and so on. I will show you this already finished application again so that you can take a screenshot if you want, because now we want to build our application so that it looks the same as this already finished application. We want to add the same controls, and then we will write the code and implement the same behavior. So I will have this already finished application on the other screen, and now we will build our application to look the same. And the reason why I picked Windows Forms framework is because it gives us an easy way to create all of those controls that you could see on our form, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time doing it manually, and instead we can focus on writing the code. So now let's design our form. Make sure to open this designer view of your form, and then open Toolbox. Go to View, Toolbox, and here you will get a list of all of the controls that you can simply drag and drop onto your form. So let's first find a label control. You can simply drag and drop it onto the form, as I said, and here is our label. Now, you probably cannot see this text, so let me very quickly increase the font. Right-click on the form, go to Properties, and here you will find Font Properties, so simply click on these three dots. And here I will increase the font to 16. I believe that will be enough. Okay, so let's just shrink this form a little bit like this. Okay, so now this is our label. And what I want to do is I want to change the text that is displayed in this label. So simply right click on the label, go to Properties, and here you will find Text Property. So what I want this label to say is this text. So I want it to say owner, and when I press enter, as you can see, the text will be changed. So now let's copy this label and paste it, because I want to add another label, but the text of this label will be amount, like this. Okay, so those are two labels that we need. Now let's add other controls. Let's also add a text box where we can enter owner's name, and then a numerical field where we can enter the amount. So let's go back to our toolbox, and here I will find control which is called text box, and I will simply drag and drop it on my form. And let's just make it a little bit bigger. So this is our text box. This is where we will enter owner's name. And then let's also add another control. It is called numeric up down, and that is the control where we can enter numbers, and I will put it here. These are controls that we will use when we want to enter owner's name and then the amount that we want to withdraw or deposit to our bank account. So that means that we will need to access these two controls from our code, and for that we use their name. So if I click on this control here, you will notice that it already has a default name. It is textbox1, but what I prefer to do is to give meaningful name to all of my controls, because that way I can remember it easily and I will understand my code better. So I will call this control owner.txt. Okay, that is much better than textbox1. And then I will also change the name of this control here. Again, right click on it, go to properties, and here you will find name property, and I will call it amount num. So amount numerical. Okay, now let's also add our grid that will serve as a table where we can show all of our bank accounts. So let's go back to Toolbox, and here I will find control called grid. It is called Data Grid View, and I will simply drag and drop it to my form like this. And let's just make it a little bit bigger, like this. Okay, so inside this grid, we will show all of our bank accounts. So let's also change the name of this grid control. Right click on it, go to Properties, and find Name Property. Where is it? It is here. So instead of Data Grid View 1, I will call it Bank Accounts Grid, like this. And the only thing that remains is to add 3 more buttons. So let's go back to Toolbox. Here I will find Button Control, and I will drag and drop it here. Let's just make it a little bit bigger. So this is going to be our first button. I will copy it and paste it here because we need 2 buttons here. Okay, and I also need another button which I will copy and paste here. And we will also need to access these buttons in our code in order to describe their behavior. So I will also change their names. So this button here will be called Create Account BTN. like this. And please notice that when I change the name, the text of the button will not be changed because we use the name in the background to access this control, and then text property is what the user sees. So if you want to change this text here, this button tree, then you need to change the text property. So let's find the text property. It is here, and here I will say create account. And now the text of the button will be changed. And now let's do the same for these two remaining buttons. So this button here, its text will be deposit. That is what the user will see. And then the name that we will use is going to be deposit BTN. Like this. And then this button here, its name is going to be withdraw BTN. Like this, and then the text is going to be simply withdraw. Like this. So that is all that you need to do in order to build the user interface of this application. And I can even start this app. And this is what we get. Here we can enter letters, here we can enter numbers, and then we can click on these buttons. But currently our application doesn't do anything because we still have not written any code. So now let's focus on writing the code. Let's see how we can create our first class, because here in this grid we are going to show all of our bank accounts. So now let's see how we can create a class that will describe how each bank account should look like. So here on your project, on your bank accounts app project, right-click on it and click on add, new item. And what we want to add is a class. And here you will name your class. I will call it bank account, like this. And then simply click on add. So this here is our class. It is called bank account, and all of the properties and behaviors that our class has, we will write them inside these curly brackets here. So as we said, bank account class will have three properties. It will have owner property, that is the name of the owner that you enter in the text box on our form. And then it will have bank account number, which is unique identifier of each bank account. And then third property will be balance. So let's now add those three properties to our class. So let's say public string owner, and then here I will put get and set inside these curly brackets. Owner is the first property of our class, and it is of type string because here I'm entering first name and last name of my user, and that is in string format. And then this part here, this public access modifier, and then this get and set inside curly brackets, please write them the same way I'm doing now. And then later in this course, we are going to explain what is the purpose of this and what is the purpose of this. For now, let's just focus on things that are more important. Now let's also add account number property. So I will simply copy and paste this property here and then change its name. Let's call it account number, like this. It should also have this public and get and set. Don't change that for now. And then it can be of type string, but then you will have to take care yourself to create a unique account number. And if you don't want to do that, what you can do is you can use a different type here, and that type is called GUID. And what GUID is going to do is it is going to give you globally unique identifier every time that you request it. So you can simply say, hey, please give me a new GUID, and then it will give you a unique ID that you can use as your account number. So it is much better to use GUID here instead of string. And then let's add third property, and that is going to be balance, like this. And balance is going to be of type decimal because here we want to enter how much money our bank account has. And then also this part here and this part here, they stay the same. So this is how you create a class. It is called bank account, and all of the properties and all of the behaviors of that class you need to write inside these curly brackets. And here we have just added three properties for our class, and those are owner, which is of type string, and then account number, which is of type GUID, so globally unique identifier, and then balance, which is of type decimal. So with this, we have created our class, and there is just one more thing that I want to change here, and that is this internal access modifier. So here I also want to say public, and as I said, later we are going to explain in detail what these access modifiers mean. For now, you can just understand that this is a way to prevent or allow access to our class. And right now, everything is public, which means that we can access everything. And then later in this course, we are going to learn different types of access modifiers and how to use them. For now, everything is just going to be public. Okay, so this is our class. And now let's create objects of this class. Now, we want to show objects of this class inside this grid here. So we will also create those objects in the code behind of this form. Something that I didn't tell you before is that each form consists of 3 parts. And this here that you can see, that is the user interface part of your form. That is the first part. The second part of your form is code behind, which means the place where we write the code. Now, how can you find that code behind? It's actually very easy. You just open your form and then you press F7, and that will take you to the code behind of your form. And another way, if this shortcut doesn't work, is to simply right-click on your form and then click on View Code. And that will take you to the same place. So this here is the place where we write the code. And as you can see, our form itself is also a class. And you will notice here that it is partial class. And what this means is that it consists of multiple parts. As I already explained, this here is one part of our form. And then this here is another part of our form. And because of that, our form is partial class. And then third part of our form is this form1.designer.cs. And this file here is automatically generated, which means that we should not write any code inside it and we should not touch it. So code behind is the place where we are going to write the code for our form. Now, please take a look at this method here. This is a special type of method called constructor, and constructor is the first method that will be invoked when a class is created. So when we start our application, this is the form that will be started. And in order to construct this form, what our operating system will do is it will invoke its constructor. So this method here will be executed when our form starts, which means that inside this method, inside this constructor, we can put any code that we would like to execute when our form starts. So what I would like to do is I would like to create a few objects of bank account class and then show them inside my grid. Now, there are different ways and different approaches to do this, but for now, let's go with the easiest approach. So we will write the code here inside the constructor of form1. Let's see how we can create an object of bank account class. So you simply say bank account, so the name of your class, and then you give the name to your object. My object will be called bank account with lowercase letters. And then I will simply say, please create new bank account, like this. So this is very similar to creating normal regular variables. You first specify the type of your variable, and then you give the name to your variable. And then in case of objects, you also need to say that you want to create a new object of that type. And for now, it is going to be empty, which means that we have not assigned any values to the properties of this object. And for that reason, these parentheses are empty. So now let's assign the values to the properties of this object. So how can we access those properties? Well, you simply say bank account dot, and then here you can see many things. And among those things are the properties that we have created. For example, here is our owner property. So you say bank account dot owner, and now you can set owner property. So who will be the owner of my bank account? Let's say Saudina Nurak, that is my name. Okay, so this is the owner of bank account, and then let's say bank account dot account number, and here I will say GUID.new GUID like this, and it is going to assign a new unique identifier to this property, which means that account number will be unique. Okay, and then third property is bank account dot balance, and here let's say, for example, 250, like this. So with this, we have created an object of class bank account. Once more, you first specify the name of the class and then the name of the object, and then you say that you want to create a new object which will be empty for now, and then you assign the values for the properties of that object. So bank account dot owner will be Saldina Nurak, and then bank account dot account number will be new unique identifier, and then bank account balance will be 250. Now let's create a few more objects of bank account class, and then we will show them inside our grid. So I will copy this entire code here and then paste it. And here I want to create object called bank account 2. So bank account 2 dot owner will be, let's say, Elon Musk, and then bank account 2 dot account number will be, again, give me new unique identifier, and then bank account 2 dot balance will be, for example, 999. That is how much money Elon Musk has. Okay, so this here is second object, and then let's create one more. So I will copy and paste the code, and here I will change the name of the object. Let's call it bank account 3. Again, I'm creating an empty object, and then I will say bank account 3 dot owner will be, let's say, Bill Gates, and then bank account 3 dot account number will be new GUID, and bank account 3 dot balance will be, let's say, 150. Okay, so with this, we have easily created 3 objects of bank account class. And now let's see how we can use these objects in practice. So for example, let's show them inside this grid here. Now, in order to show data inside our grid, we need to put that data inside a list, and then we can simply set that list as the data source for this grid. So let's go back to the code behind, press F7, and here I will create a list of bank accounts. I will call them bank accounts, and for now it is going to be new list, which is empty. And now what I will do is I will say bank accounts dot add. So what I will do is I will add this first bank account, and then also I will add bank account 2 and then bank account 3, like this. So now that I have inside this list all of my bank accounts, what I can do is I can set this list as the data source for this grid here. And in order to do that, and in order to work with this grid in our code, we need to know what is its name. So let's check one more time what was the name that we gave to this grid. So simply right-click on the grid, go to Properties, and find Name property. It should be here somewhere. So the name is Bank Accounts Grid. Okay, so now let's close this Properties window and let's press F7 to go to the code behind. And here I will say Bank Accounts Grid dot data source. So what I want to do is I want to set data source for my grid, and data source will be this list here, which means please show this list of bank accounts inside my grid. So now when I start my application, we should see these 3 objects inside our grid. So let's start the application, and as you can see, here are 3 objects that we have created. Now, I know that I said that we will not style this application and that we will focus only on writing the code, but there is one thing that bothers me a lot related to this grid, and that is this empty space here. So one small thing that I want to change is I want to tell to the columns of this grid to fill this entire space. So that is one thing that I want to change. So let's close our application and let's go to this design of our form. Right click on the grid, go to Properties, and here you are going to find the property which is called, let me check, it is called auto size columns mode. That is the property that you need. And here you need to set it to fill, which means that automatically the size of columns will be to fill the entire grid. So now if I start the application, you will see that our grid looks much better and there is no more empty space in our grid. So in this video, we learned what is object-oriented programming and how we can use it in order to build real useful applications. We also learned what are classes and what are objects and how to use them in practice in our applications. Now, there are still many things that we need to add and implement in our application, but let's do that in the next video because this video is already becoming too long. On my YouTube channel, you can find an entire playlist about practical OOP, so practical object-oriented programming, and you can watch all of the videos and learn everything that you need about object-oriented programming. And if you want to learn practical programming in general so that you can start a career as a software developer and work on real projects in real companies, then you should join my practical programming course because there I will teach you everything that you need to know in the shortest amount of time so that you can get a job as a software developer. I will be there to help you in every step of the way, and your job is just to follow the plan that I have created for you. So in the description, I will leave a special coupon code that you can use in order to save some money and get a discount. And then if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have a 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you're not satisfied for any reason, you can get all of your money back, no questions asked from our side. So instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and change your life. So that would be all for this video. If you have any questions, you can leave those in the comment section, and please write your questions in the comment section instead of sending them directly to me in private messages, because when I reply to a public comment, then all of the other people can also see that answer and they can benefit from it. And also, if you enjoyed this video and if it was beneficial for you, please give it a big thumbs up so that I know and I can create more videos like this one. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, you are going to learn about constructors in object-oriented programming, and I will show you on a practical example how constructors are used and why we need them. This is the second video in a playlist where I teach you about practical object-oriented programming, and in the first video, we have built this application that you can see on the screen. So first, let's explain the application that we have built in the previous video and that I have here, and then we are going to continue building this application together. Hey there! If your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money, and if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back, no questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. So here we have an application for managing bank accounts. And if I start this application, you will see that here inside this grid, we have 3 bank accounts, and all those 3 bank accounts have owner, account number, and balance. In the previous video, we learned what are classes and what are objects, and we have also created a class called bank account, and then we have created 3 objects of that class. That is this bank account, and then this bank account here. So now I will show you how that looks like in code. So here is our bank account class, and as you can see, it has 3 properties: owner, account number, and balance. And then in the code behind of this form, we have created 3 objects of that class. So let's open code behind, simply right click on the form and click on view code. Okay, so here we are creating first object, and then we are setting its owner, account number, and balance. And then here we are creating second bank account and then third bank account. And then here I'm creating an empty list of bank accounts. I am adding all those 3 bank accounts in the list, and then I simply set that list as the data source for my grid. So when I start the application, you can see these 3 bank accounts inside our grid. So that is what we have done in the previous video. And then in this video, we are going to learn about constructors, and we will also implement these 3 functionalities here so that we can create new bank account that will be added to this grid, and also deposit and withdraw money from existing bank accounts. So our goal for this chapter is we don't want to hard code these 3 bank accounts like we have currently. We want to be able to create them programmatically and then deposit and withdraw money from those bank accounts. So the user enters name of the owner, and then when he clicks on create account, that account should be added into this grid. And then also we want to implement these 2 functionalities so that we can deposit and withdraw money from existing bank accounts. And that is what we are going to do together in this video. And if you want to download my project so that you have the same application that I have here, and so that you can continue building it together with me, I will leave a link in the description to my GitHub repository, and from there you can download this application and you can code along with me and implement all of these functionalities. Please just keep in mind that in order to be able to work on this application, you need to install 2 things. You need to have Visual Studio 2022 or newer version. And the second thing is you need to install .NET 8.0 framework, because those are 2 things that I have used in order to create this application. And if you don't have those 2, again, I will leave a link in the description of this video that you can use to download them and install them. And the installation process is very easy, mostly next, finish, and then they are completely free for students. So let's first explain what are constructors. You can understand a constructor as a special method that is invoked when you create an object of a class. And the job of constructor is to create or to construct that object. So basically, constructors are used to set the values for the properties of the object that you are creating. So when you first create an object, its constructor will be invoked, and inside constructor, you can set the initial values for the properties of that object. So this is the definition, and now let's see how this works in practice, because that way it will be much easier for you to understand and to learn what are constructors and what are the benefits of using constructors. So I will stop my application and I will open my bank account class, and I want to create the constructor for this class. So now let's see how we can do that. Now there are a few rules when you are creating a constructor, and the first rule is that you should create a constructor inside the class that it belongs to. So if we are creating constructor for bank account class, then we need to create it inside these curly brackets of our bank account class. That is the first rule. The second rule is that constructor always needs to be public. So I will say public, and there are some exceptions to this rule. You can learn more about those exceptions in my practical programming course in the CodeBeauty Academy, because those are some more advanced topics. For now, let's just say that constructors always need to be public. Okay, that is the second rule. The third rule is that constructor does not have a return type. And then the fourth rule is that the name of the constructor is the same as the name of the class that it belongs to. So by doing this, I have created a constructor. Now this constructor is currently empty, but as I explained, the constructor will be invoked every time that you create an object of bank account class, which means that here we can write the code that will be executed every time that we create a new bank account. And before we start writing the code and changing this empty default constructor, let's first explain what we want to achieve. So let's go to the code behind of our form. Simply right-click on the form and click on View Code. And here you will notice that we are creating bank account objects. This is the first, second, and third bank account that we have created, and you can already notice that it is taking a lot of lines of code to create these three objects. So now the question is there an easier and better way to do this same thing? It would be very cool if we could do something like this. So instead of creating new bank account that is empty and then assigning owner, account number, and balance, we would like to do something like this. I'm going to comment these three lines of code, and here inside these parentheses, when I'm creating my bank account, I will pass this owner name like this, and then I will pass this GUID like this, and then instead of passing this as a balance, let's say that initially whenever you create a new bank account, its balance is going to be 0. And then if we want to create another bank account, again, I will not need these three lines of code. Instead, I will pass here everything that is necessary to construct that bank account. So owner's name again, and then I will pass this new GUID like this. And then, as I said, balance initially when you are creating an account will be 0, like this. And we will do the same when we are creating this third bank account. So I will comment out this entire code. And then here, when I'm constructing that object, I will pass owner's name and then GUID, which will be the same as in the previous two. And then balance will be initially 0, like this. So my goal is to delete this code that I have commented, and then when I'm creating my objects, to use just this code here that remains. So now the question is, can we do this, and how can we make our code to work? Because currently we have these red squigglies, which means that we have errors in our code. Well, let's explain what is happening here. So when you are creating bank account object, here will be invoked the constructor, because as we said, constructor is used in order to create or to construct that object. So here what we are doing, instead of having empty parentheses, is we are passing some parameters to our constructor, and those parameters are the values or the information that the constructor needs in order to construct that object. In our case, we are passing owner's name and then GUID and then balance. And we are doing that for all of the bank account objects that we are creating. And the reason why we have this red squiggly, this error, is because we don't have any constructors that correspond to these parameters here. So we don't have any constructors that receive these three parameters, and then based on these three parameters, they construct the object. So in order to fix these red squigglies, we would have to create a constructor that receives owner's name, new GUID, and then balance, and then it creates an object based on these three informations. But before we do that, let's see if we can make this code even shorter. Please notice that when we are creating these three bank accounts, initially the only thing that is different is owner's name. So this account is mine, and then this one is from Elon Musk, and this one is from Bill Gates. These remaining two things, so GUID and balance, the way that we are creating those is the same. So here we are generating new GUID, which means new account number, and we are passing that as a parameter to our constructor. And then here as well, we are creating new GUID, new account number, and again, we are passing it as a parameter, and we are doing absolutely the same thing for this third bank account, which means that we don't need to pass this as a parameter to our constructor. We can simply request a new GUID in the constructor itself. And then for this third parameter, which is balance, we said that initially each bank account that is created, its balance will be 0. So again, we don't need to pass this as a parameter to our constructor. We can simply do it in the constructor for each bank account that we create. So that means that we can remove these two parameters from our constructor like this. And the only thing that we need to leave is owner's name. So I will remove it from here as well. And then from here, Also, so when we are creating new bank account, the only thing that we need to pass to the constructor is the name of the owner. So now, instead of creating a constructor that has 3 parameters, we can create a constructor that has just 1 parameter, and that is owner. So now let's do that. Let's go to our bank account class, and here let's say that our constructor will receive 1 parameter. It will be of type string, and it will be called owner with lowercase letters. Okay, so here inside these curly brackets of my constructor, what I will do is I will say that this property, owner property of my bank account, will be equal to this parameter that I have received. So whoever is creating new bank account object, he needs to pass owner as the parameter to the constructor. And then here we will construct that object based on the value that we have received as the parameter. That is going to be the name of the owner. And then for these 2 remaining properties, account number and balance, we already know how to initialize those. So for account number, I will say that it is equal to new GUID, like this. So for each bank account, please generate new GUID. And then for balance, we know that initially when you create a new bank account, its balance is going to be 0. So with this, we have successfully created our constructor. It receives 1 string parameter, that is owner of the bank account. And here inside these curly brackets of the constructor, we are setting initial values for the properties of that object. So the owner of the bank account will be the value that we receive here, and then account number will be new GUID, and then balance of that bank account initially will be 0. And this constructor will be invoked for each new bank account object that we create. And if we go now to the code behind of our form, now you can see that the red squiggly that we had here has disappeared, and currently we don't have any errors. So now we are able to use this code, which is a lot shorter, in order to create objects of bank account class. So when we are creating a new bank account, here it will invoke its constructor, and this will be passed as the owner for the bank account. And then in the background, constructor will also set the account number, so it will generate new GUID for the account number, and also it will set the balance for that account to 0. And if I start the application, as you can see, we will get the same behavior that we previously had, but now the code is a lot shorter. And even if I want to add a new bank account, I will simply copy this line of code. I will create bank account 4, and here I will say that the owner is going to be, let's say, Mark Zuckerberg, like this, and then we will simply add that 4th bank account to our list, and that list will be set as the data source for our grid. So now when I start the application again, as you can see, here is our 4th bank account. So in this video, you learned what are constructors and how to use constructors in order to easily create objects of a class. And here we have 4 objects that we have created with the help of our constructor. Now, there are a lot more things that we want to do in this application. For example, something that I currently don't like is that these 4 objects are hard-coded in our code. And what I want to be able to do instead is I want to be able to create new bank account by clicking on this button. And then also I want to implement these 2 functionalities so that I can deposit and withdraw money from my bank accounts. But since I know that you don't like videos that are too long, let's do that in the next video of this playlist. So in the next video, we are going to implement these 3 functionalities so that we can programmatically add new bank account, and then so that we can deposit or withdraw money from the selected bank account. So if you have any questions, please leave those in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up so that I know to create more videos like this one. And if your goal is to learn practical programming so that you can start a successful career and build useful and interesting applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube channel, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course, because There, I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and you will get all of the support and help from me that you need in order to achieve your goals. In the course, we are working on realistic projects, so you will get real experience that you need. I will also introduce you to a community of successful developers that you can learn from and collaborate with, and everything that you need will be on one place. So your job is just to follow the plan that I have created, and that plan will take you to your first job as a software developer. So if you decide to join, in the description I will leave a special coupon code that you can use in order to save some money. And if you're not sure if the course is for you or not, you can definitely try it out for 7 days, because we have a 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you can get all of your money back, no questions asked from our side. So you really have nothing to lose, and learning to code can absolutely change your life. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, you are going to learn about events and event-driven programming, and I'm going to show you how all of that works on a practical example. So when we learn what are events, that will help us to build application that looks like this. Here I'm showing you already finished application. Inside this grid, we have bank accounts, and then here if I enter, for example, Jeff Bezos, and I click on create account, that bank account will be added to this grid. And then also if I select that bank account and I say, for example, amount will be 100, and I click on deposit, that amount will be added to the balance of the selected bank account. And then again, if I select the bank account and I say, for example, 50, but this time I click on withdraw, that money will be withdrawn from the balance of selected bank account. So this is what we want to implement, and in order to implement this, we need to learn about events and event-driven programming. Hey there, if your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back, no questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. This video is the third video in a series where we are learning about object-oriented programming, and we are building this application. So in case that you did not watch previous 2 videos, please make sure to watch those 2 videos, because there you can learn what are classes and objects, and also what are constructors and how to use them, because those are important topics that you should understand before watching this video and before we continue to build this application. This is already finished application, so the application that we want to build. And now I want to show you the code that we have written so far and the application that we have so far. And if you want to download this same project that I have here so that you can code along with me in this video, then I'm going to leave a link to my GitHub repository in the description so you can download the same code that I have here. But please keep in mind that in order to build this application, you need to install Visual Studio 2022 or newer version. You can download Community Edition, which is completely free for students. And also you need to install .NET Framework 8.0, because that is what I'm using to build this application. And that is also free, so I will leave a link in the description so that you can download both. Now let's see the code that we have written so far. So here I have bank account class, and that class has 3 properties. It has owner, account number, and balance. And then it also has a constructor that receives 1 parameter, that is string owner, and then it initializes all of these three properties. So the owner will be the parameter that was received in the constructor, and then for account number we will generate new GUID, and then balance will be initially set to 0 because when you're first creating new bank account, its balance is initially 0. Also, we have this form, and this is its user interface. So when I start the application, this is our form, and here inside this grid we get 4 bank accounts, but currently we have not implemented any functionalities to create new bank account, deposit, or withdraw money. So here if I say, for example, test, and I click on create account, nothing is going to happen. So now the question is, how do we have these 4 bank accounts? Well, if I go to the code behind of this form, so right click on the form and click on view code, you will notice that here we are creating 4 bank account objects. We are hard coding them, and then I'm creating a list of bank accounts and I'm adding those 4 objects into my list, and then I simply set the list as the data source for my grid. So that is the reason why we can see these 4 bank accounts when we start our application. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to add new bank account by clicking on this button here. And in order to do that, we need to learn what are events and what is event-driven programming. So the first question is, what is event-driven programming? Event-driven programming is programming paradigm, which means approach to programming that is usually used in GUI applications. And this here is an example of GUI application. This is graphical user interface application. So in event-driven programming, your program waits for an event to happen, and then it handles that event. It reacts to that event. So now you're probably wondering, Saldina, what is an event? An event is user's action in your program. So let me start the application and let me show you some examples of events that can happen in our program. For example, what user can do is he can click on this button. That is an event, and that event is called button click. Another event that can happen in our program is when user types characters into this text box. So each time that the user enters a new character or deletes an existing character, in the background an event is going to be raised, and that event is called text changed. So basically, each time that you change the text of this text box by deleting an existing character or entering a new character, in the background, your program is going to raise an event called text changed. Another event is, for example, when you click on a cell of this grid, and that event is called cell clicked. Or when you select the entire row, and that event is called row selected. So all of these are examples of events that can happen in your program, which means the actions that the user can do in your program. So there are hundreds of different events that can happen in your program, and some of them happen very often, and some of them happen very, very rarely. The events that I demonstrated here, they happen very often. Also, each control has many different events. For example, our grid has an event called cell click. That is when you click an individual cell. It can have an event called row selected, that is when you select just one row, or for example, you can select multiple rows of your grid. So those are all different events, so different actions that the user can do with grid control. And then, for example, button control, we already demonstrated that each button has click event, so you can click on each one of these buttons. That is an event that button control has. But another event that can happen on a button is, for example, mouse enter and then mouse leave. Mouse enter, mouse leave. So please notice when I enter with the mouse, the button becomes blue, and then when I leave, the button becomes gray again. So those are also two events that can happen on a button. And the purpose of this event is for your user to have some sort of visual feedback so that program appears more interactive. So when you enter on this button, the button will change the color, or for example, you will write some sort of tooltip where you can explain to the user what that button does, or something like that. So all of these are examples of events that can happen in programs. So once more, an event is the action that user can perform in your program. So now the question is, what is event handler? Event handler is the reaction. So what is going to happen when the user clicks on a button, or when he selects a cell in the grid, or when he deletes a letter? So event handler is the reaction of your program. So you can understand event handler as a special type of method or function that will be invoked when an event happens. And the job of that event handler is to handle the event, which means that inside that event handler, you are going to write the code and describe what your program should do when that specific event happens. For example, we can create a method called createAccountButtonClicked, and that method will be invoked every time that the user clicks on this button. And inside that method, we are going to say what should happen when the user clicks on this button. In our case, what should happen is that we should read the text that the user has typed into this text box, and we should add new bank account into our grid, and then also we can clear this text box. So that is what should happen when the user clicks on this button. So now let's do this in practice. Let's create an event handler and let's see how this works in code. So how can you create an event handler? Well, let's right-click on our button and go to Properties. And here, if you select Events, in this list, you are going to see all of the events that can happen for a button control. Now, the event that I'm looking for is called click, and in my case, it is the first event, and it is the event that is most commonly used with a button control. So in order to create event handler for click event, you will simply double-click here, like this. And in the background, in the code behind, that will create event handler for our create account button. So this method here is the one that will be invoked each time that the user clicks on this button. And here you can see that we have connected click event and this event handler with this name. So each time when the user clicks on this button, this event handler will be invoked, and the code that is inside that event handler will be executed. Now, since button click event is used very, very often in programs, Visual Studio gives you an easier way to access its event handler. So you don't have to right-click, go to Properties, and then find click event inside this list here. You can simply double-click on that button, and it is going to take you to its event handler. So this is like a little shortcut that you can use, and from this point on I will use it all the time. So I can even close this properties window, because each time that we want to access this click event handler for our create account button, I will simply double click on the button and it is going to take us to its event handler. So here we will write the code that will be executed when we click on our button. So just for testing purposes, let's say, for example, when I click on this button, I simply want to show a message box. So messagebox.show, and in that message box, I will show a text that says, learn practical programming on this site here. So now when I click on this button, inside a small message box, we should see this text. So let's start the application. And when I click on the button, as you can see, we get this message box, and inside it, it says, learn practical programming on CodeBeautyAcademy.com. So this is just for testing purposes to see that our event handler works. And what we actually want to do is we want to take the text from this text box, and then based on that text, based on that owner, we want to add new bank account into this grid here. So now let's implement that. Currently in our code behind, we have hard-coded these 4 bank accounts and we are adding them to our list, and then we are showing them as the data source of our grid. So right now I want to delete these 4 bank accounts because we don't want to hard code anything. We want to add bank accounts programmatically through our application. So I will also delete this part here because these bank accounts don't exist anymore, so we cannot add them to our list. So I have deleted all of that code from my form 1 constructor. Now here we have our bank accounts list, which is currently empty. And what I will do is I will take this list and I will move it here so that it is global variable. So this here will be global property of the form, which means that we will be able to access this list from all of the different methods of our form. The reason for this is because inside this list, we are going to keep all of the bank accounts, and we will need to access this list from many different methods of our form or from many different event handlers, because currently we are creating new bank account. So that means that we will need to access this list from this event handler here, but in the future, we are also going to create event handlers for deposit and withdraw, and those are going to be different methods. So in order to be able to access our bank accounts list from all of those different methods, we will make it to be a global variable of our entire form, and that way we will be able to access it from all of the methods of this form. Now, one thing that is nice to do when you are creating a global variable is you should name it with capital letter. Now, you don't have to do this, but this is just a good practice that many developers follow. So my suggestion is that you also follow it. The same way that, for example, in English language, you don't have to follow all of the grammatical rules and people will still be able to understand you. But if you do follow all of the grammatical rules, it will be much easier to communicate and people will understand you much better. So the same applies for programming, and this is naming convention that many developers use, that all of the experienced developers use, so you should also try to use it as well. So now this is a global variable, which means that we can access it from this entire form class, from all of its methods. So now let's delete this line here and let's implement this event handler. So when the user clicks on the button, let's see what should happen. So we should create new bank account. I will call it bank account with lowercase b. So let's create new bank account. And this class has one constructor, and you can see it here. So here we should pass the name of the owner of this bank account. So now the question is, where can we get that name? Well, it's actually very easy. We can get that name from this text box here. Let's check what is the name of this control. Its name is, let me find it. Its name is owner.txt. So now let's go back to our event handler. Okay, so here in the constructor, I'm going to pass the following: owner.txt.text. So please give me the text of this control here. So take the text from our owner text box and pass that into the constructor of our bank account. So with this, we have created our bank account, and now let's simply add it to this list. So let's say bank accounts.add bank account. Okay, and now I can simply say bank accounts grid.data source will be equal to this list here. And one thing that you can do in order to prevent any errors is, before you set the data source for your grid, you can simply clear your grid. So you can say bank accounts grid.data source is equal to null. So first null the data source of my grid, empty it, clear it, however you want, and then set its data source to this list here. And these two things that you can see here, so clearing the grid and then setting new data source for the grid, these two are usually extracted into a separate method so that they can be reused, and that method is called refresh grid. So that is also what we are going to do. So I will create a private method, so private void, and I will call it refresh grid, like this. And inside this method, I will simply move these two lines of code. And now we can reuse this method as many times as we want. So whenever we want to refresh our grid, we simply invoke this method, and this method will do everything that is necessary in order to refresh the grid. So now let's start the program and let's see what is the behavior that we have. So here I will enter, for example, Saldina, and then click on create account. And as you can see, new bank account will be added to our grid. And then if I say, for example, Bill Gates, and I say create account, as you can see, Bill Gates will also be added to our grid. Now, there are also a few improvements that I want to do here. There is actually one bug that we have in our program, and that is the following. If I delete this text from our text box and I say create account, as you can see, an account with owner, empty owner, will be created. So this here is a bug, and now we want to prevent this bug from happening. So we want to prevent our user from creating an account that does not have an owner. So let's do that. Let's go to our event handler, and here I will write the following code. I will say if string is null or empty. Which string? Well, this string here. So if this string is null or empty, then simply return, which means don't execute any of this code below. So when I try to add new bank account, first I will check if the user has entered any text into this text box, and if this text here is null or empty, then I will return from this event handler, which means that new bank account will not be added. But in case that the user has entered some text here, then this part of the code will be executed. So now let's start the application and let's test this. Okay, so now if I say, for example, CodeBeauty, and I say create account, that account will be added. But if I delete the text from this text box and I say create account now, as you can see, the bug has disappeared, and now we cannot add bank account with empty owner anymore. So that bug has been fixed. So that is one bug that I wanted to fix, and there is still one more improvement that I want to make in my application, and that is the following. Let's say, for example, that I will add Elon Musk, and when I click on create account, as you can see, that new bank account will be added. But what I want to happen as well is I want this text box to be cleared automatically so that the user can enter the new bank account without having to delete this manually. So let's also implement that. So I will go back to this event handler, and after I refresh my grid and I show that newly added bank account, I will simply say owner txt.text will be equal to empty string. So like this, or you can say string empty, whichever you prefer. Both options are going to work the same. And let's start the app in order to test this. So let's say Saldina, create account, and as you can see, the text box will be cleared. If I say Elon and then create account, again, the text box will be cleared. So this behavior here is more user-friendly and it gives better user experience of our application. So let's do a quick recap of what we have learned in this video. In this video, we learned what is event-driven programming, what are events, and what are event handlers. we said that event-driven programming is programming paradigm or approach to programming that is commonly used with graphical user interface applications, such as our application. And in event-driven programming, your application waits for the user to create an event, for example, a button click, and then your program is going to react to that event by invoking its event handler. So here we have created a handler for this button click here. So when the user clicks on this button, this is the event handler that will be invoked, and this is the code that will be executed. So now, in order to practice, you can implement event handlers for deposit and withdraw button, and I will show you how those two should behave on this already finished application that I have here. So when you select an entire row in your grid and then you enter the amount, let's say 50, if you click on deposit, that amount should be deposited or added to your balance, and you should get this message like we have here. And then if you select a bank account, enter amount and click on withdraw, that amount should be subtracted from your balance. And then also, for example, if I try to withdraw more money than I have on the balance, for example, let's say that I'm trying to withdraw $10, but I have only 6. Let's see what is going to happen. It says, error, you cannot withdraw $10 or whatever. So you can try and implement this on your own in order to practice. And if you want to do this together with me, and if you want to learn many more important things about programming, then make sure to watch the next video of this playlist. And if you want to learn practical programming so that you can build any application that you desire and so that you can start a successful career as a software developer, then the best thing that you can do is to join my practical programming course, because if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, which are completely free, then you are going to enjoy a lot more learning from my practical programming course, which is paid. So, of course, I can dedicate a lot more time. I can help each one of my students, and I can take you from beginner to expert, be there for you through that entire process and help you to achieve your goals. I have created the entire plan for you, step by step, all of the video lessons that you need to watch, all of the exercises and tasks that you need to do. So your job is just to follow that plan. In that process, you will have my help, and you will also have friends and other students that you can collaborate with. You can do tasks together and you can motivate each other. Also, we are going to work on realistic projects so that you can get all of the experience that you need so that tomorrow you can start working in a real company and start making money. So if you want to join, in the description, I'm going to leave a special coupon code that you can use in order to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, I still suggest that you try it out, because we have a 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back. So you really have nothing to lose, and learning to code can absolutely change your life. So if you have any questions about my practical programming course or about this video, please let me know in the comment section and I will reply to your question. Also, if you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up so that I know and so that I can create more videos like this one in the future. And in the next video of this series, we are going to continue building this application together. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, you will learn about encapsulation in object-oriented programming, and I will teach you how to use it on a practical example. This is 4th video in a series where we are learning about OOP concepts and building this application. And in this video, I will do a quick recap of the code that we have written so far and the application that we have built, and then I will explain what we are going to do in this video. Hey there! If your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, And if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back. No questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. The application that we have built is used to manage bank accounts. So let me start the app and show you what we have so far. So if I enter here, for example, CodeBeauty, and I say create account, that bank account will be created and added to our grid. Let's add another one. Let's say, for example, Elon Musk, and let's also click on create account. And as you can see, that bank account will be added to the grid as well. So that is the application that we have built so far. And if you want to download the same project that I have here, then I will leave a link to my GitHub repository in the description so that you can download everything that we have built in the previous few videos, and so that you can continue working on this application together with me in this video. So that is what we have so far. And in this video, we are going to implement deposit and withdraw functionalities. And in that process, I will teach you about encapsulation. So what I want to implement in this video is when I select a specific bank account and I enter here the amount, if I click on deposit, that amount should be deposited or added to the balance. And then if I click on withdraw, that amount should be subtracted from the balance of that selected bank account. That is what we are going to do in this video, and I will show you two different approaches. The first approach will be without encapsulation, and then in the second approach, I will teach you what is encapsulation and how we can optimize our code and improve it with the help of encapsulation. So let me first show you the code that we have written so far, and then we will start implementing these functionalities. Currently in our program, we have this class called bank account, and bank account class has these three properties: owner, account number, and balance. And we have also created this constructor that receives one parameter. It receives owner. So based on this parameter, it is going to create new bank account. So this value here will be the name of the owner, and then it is going to generate new GUID for account number, and it will set 0 as the initial value of balance. So when you first create new bank account, its balance is going to be 0. And then also we have this form. This is how the user interface of the form looks like, and we have named all of these controls so that we can use them in code. And then one functionality that we have implemented is the functionality of this button here. So when I double click on create account, it is going to take us to the implementation of its event handler. And this code here describes what is going to happen when the user clicks on create account button. And this code is used in order to create new bank account and to add it and show it inside our grid. So that is the code that we have so far. And now let's focus on building deposit functionality. So what is going to happen when the user clicks on deposit button? So let's create event handler that will be invoked when the user clicks on deposit button. And if you're not familiar with events and event handlers, please make sure to watch the previous video of this playlist. I will link it here and also in the description. So double click on the button, and that will create our event handler. And here we can describe what is going to happen when the user clicks on deposit button. So what should happen is the following. Here I will show you an already finished application just so that you can get a better idea of what we want to implement. So when the user clicks on deposit button, we need to check the following. First, we need to check that he has selected a row inside our grid. So he needs to select a bank account, and please make sure that he has selected just one bank account, because he can also select multiple bank accounts, but what we want to make sure is that he has selected just one, like this. And then also we want to make sure that he has entered amount inside this numerical field. So for example, 15, and that amount should be greater than 0, because it doesn't make sense to deposit -1 or -2 or any negative number. So the amount has to be greater than 0. So once he has those two, once he has selected just one bank account and entered valid amount that is greater than 0, then that amount should be added to the balance. So this is what should happen when he clicks on deposit button. And now let's see how we can implement this in our code. So here inside event handler, we first need to check that he has selected just one row from our grid. And for that reason, let me check what is the name of this grid, because we will be using it in our code. So right click on the grid, go to properties, and here you should be able to find name property. It is here. So the name of our grid is bank accounts grid. Okay, so let's go back to the event handler of our deposit button. And here we will write the code. So let's say if bank accounts grid dot selected rows dot count is equal to 1. This means if the user has selected just one row in our grid. So that is the first thing that we need to check. And then we also need to check that he has entered valid amount, so amount that is greater than 0. And for that, we will also need to check what is the name of this numerical control. So right click on it, go to properties, and here also find name property. So the name is amount num. Okay, so let's go back to the code behind. Okay, so here I will also say amount num dot value is greater than 0, like this. So only in the case that these two conditions are fulfilled, we can deposit this amount to our balance. So that means that I will add curly brackets and I will write the code for depositing the money to the balance inside these curly brackets, which means only if this condition here is fulfilled, then execute the code that we will put here. So now let's see how we can change the balance of the selected bank account. So for that, we will first need to get the actual bank account that is selected, because inside our grid, we can have multiple bank accounts. So let's see how we can do that first. Here I will create a variable of type bank account, and I will call it selected bank account, like this. So how can I get the bank account that is actually selected? Well, we can reuse part of this code that we have here. So from our bank accounts grid, get all of the selected rows, because we already saw that we can have multiple rows that are selected. But since we already know that here we can enter only if we have selected just one row, so we made sure by doing this check that we have only one selected row. That means that I can take the first one from this array here, and that is the one with index 0. So this here is going to be my selected row from the grid. But what I need to do is I need to take the actual item, the actual data that is shown inside that row. So for that, I will say, please give me data bound item from that row. So the item that is shown inside that row, because we can use our grid in order to show different types of data. And what I want to do is I want to take that actual item and I want to convert it into a bank account. So now inside this variable, we will have the bank account that our user has selected. So once more, we take all of the selected rows from our grid, because as I already demonstrated, you can select multiple rows in your grid and all of them will be stored inside this array. And for example, if you have selected 5 rows, then the array will have 5 elements starting from index 0 to index 4. That is how indexation of the array goes. But since we made sure that we have only one row that is selected, that means that we can take the first element of the array, and that is the one with index 0. And then from that row, we take the actual data, the actual item, and we convert it into bank account type. So here I will have my selected bank account, and now what I can do is I can simply say selected bank account dot balance, and I can change the balance. So I can say, please add to my balance the amount that the user has entered here, like this. So here we have added money to the balance, and now in order to be able to see that change in our grid, we need to refresh our grid, and for that I will simply invoke this method that we have written here previously in one of the previous videos. So let me just invoke this method that will refresh the grid, and now we can start the application and test this functionality. So if I say CodeBeauty and I click on create account, the account will be added. So now let's select this account and let's enter the amount. Let's say, for example, 50. And when I click on deposit, as you can see, that amount will be deposited to the balance. So our deposit functionality works, and there is just one small thing that I would like to add in order to improve the user experience, and that would be to clear this numerical field here. So after I refresh the grid, I would also like to null this value here. So let me close the application, and here, after I refresh the grid, I will say that amount numerical dot value will be equal to 0, like this. So let's test this once more. Let's add a few bank accounts. Let's say Elon Musk, and then let's say Bill Gates. And now I will add some money to Bill Gates's balance. So here I will enter, for example, 99. And if I say deposit, that amount will be deposited to its balance. Now, there is still one small bug that we have here, and that is the following. Let me select a bank account, let's say Elon Musk, and if I try to enter a really big number, pay attention to what is going to happen. So if I say deposit, as you can see, it will only deposit $100 and not the amount that I have entered. And the reason for that is the following. If I enter a really big number here, like this, for example, when this control loses focus because I've clicked on some other control, for example, here, or on this button, or on this button, or on any other control, what is going to happen is that when this amount numerical loses focus, it is going to change the value that we had here into the value that fits its validation. So now the question is, where is that validation? And the answer is very simple. Let me close the application and let's right click on this amount numerical and go to properties. And here among the properties, you are going to find maximum and minimum. And these are maximum number that you can enter into this field and then minimum number that you can enter into this field. So this here is the reason of the bug that we experienced. And the way to fix that bug is actually very easy. You simply change these two values and that will allow the user to enter bigger or smaller numbers. So here let's say 9999999. Okay, and then here let's say minus 9999999. Okay, I think these numbers will be big enough and small enough. So now if I start the app, the bug should disappear. Let's say Elon Musk and then create account. So if I select his bank account and here I enter, for example, 3567 and I say deposit, as you can see, that amount will be deposited to the balance. And once more, let's add, for example, 4557 and click on deposit. And as you can see, he's amassing wealth in my application as in real world. So that is how deposit functionality should work. And now let's implement withdraw functionality. And withdraw functionality is going to be almost the same as deposit with just one small difference. And that is instead of adding to the balance, we should subtract from the balance. So let's write code for withdraw functionality. So let's implement the event handler. Okay, and I will close this so that we have more space to write the code. So here is the event handler for our withdraw button click. And inside here, I will simply copy this code that we have written for our deposit button click, and I will paste it here. And I will just make one small change, and that is, instead of adding to the balance, I will simply subtract from the balance. And that is it. That is all that we need to do. And now we can start our application and test both deposit and withdraw functionalities. So let me first add a couple of bank accounts. Let's say CodeBeauty, and then let's say Elon Musk, and let's also add Bill Gates, like this. So let's try and deposit some money. Let's say, for example, for Elon Musk, I want to add $150. Okay. And then to Bill Gates, let's say that I want to add $650. Okay, so our deposit functionality works. Now let's test withdraw functionality. I will select Elon Musk, and here I will say, for example, 99. And if I click on withdraw, as you can see, that amount was subtracted from his balance. Now let me show you one problem that we have in our application. Let's select a bank account, any bank account, and let's try to withdraw more money than it has. So here I will try to withdraw $750. So if I click on withdraw, as you can see, balance has went into negative numbers. And this here is a problem. Now, there are many ways in order to prevent this problem from happening, but the best one would be with the help of encapsulation. And in order to prevent this problem with the help of encapsulation, you first need to understand what is encapsulation. The situation that we currently have in our application is that any developer who's working on our project, he can change the balance by simply saying bank account.balance, and then he can set any value that he wants without having to follow any rules. And that should not be allowed. What should happen instead is that we, as creators of bank account class and the ones who know all of the internal workings and all of the logic of how bank accounts should work, we should also provide a set of rules that need to be followed by other developers when they are trying to change the balance. So that means that balance property should not be accessible outside of the class. We should protect it. We should make it private so that not everyone can access it. And then the only way to change the balance will be through methods that we, as creators of bank account class, write. And in those methods, we are going to outline all of the rules that need to be followed. So if you are trying to deposit money to the balance, you cannot change the balance directly. You need to go through method which is called, for example, deposit. And in that method, I will outline all of the rules that you need to follow. The same applies if you're trying to withdraw money. So if the ATM doesn't have enough money, your request will be declined. If you don't have enough money, again, your request will be declined. If bank has some rules about anti-money laundering or something like that, again, your request will be declined. So we, as creators of bank account class, should protect the balance property. We should encapsulate it within the class. And then if someone wants to change the value of the balance, we are going to expose methods where we will write all of the rules that you need to follow. And if you follow all of those rules, by invoking those methods, you can change the balance. So that is the whole idea of encapsulation, and encapsulation is one of the most important concepts in object-oriented programming, and this principle of encapsulation applies to all of the OOP languages. I will show you how it works in C#, and then you can translate that same knowledge into any other OOP language, so C++, Java, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, and so on. So you can understand encapsulation as putting a protective shell around certain properties of your class, so making them private so that they cannot be accessed outside of the class, and that way you are going to prevent their misuse. But since we still need to access those properties, what we can do is we can publicly expose different methods, and by invoking those methods you can either get or set the value of those properties, but only if you follow all of the rules that are written in those methods. So you cannot access a property that is encapsulated directly. You can only do it through a set of methods, so that can be one method or more methods, but in those methods are the exact rules that you need to follow as well. So let's now see how we can implement encapsulation in our code as well. So let's go to our bank account class, and what I want to do is I want to encapsulate this balance property. In what way? Well, you should be able to get its value directly. So when you say bank account.balance, you should be able to directly get the value of the balance, but you should not be able to change it directly. So if you say bank account.balance is equal to something, that should not be allowed. You should not be allowed to change that value without following specific rules. So in order to implement what I just said, we need to say that the setter of this balance property is going to be private, like this. So getter is public by default, but setter is private. We have just made it private, which means that you can get or read the value of the balance directly, but you cannot set it. You cannot change the value of the balance because it is private, which means that it can be changed only inside this class. So only from this curly bracket here till this curly bracket here. And you cannot change it anywhere outside of this class because, once more, it is private, it is encapsulated. So does that mean that now we will have errors in our application? Absolutely yes, we will have errors. And the reason for that is these three references. So our balance property is being used on three different places. So if I click here, it is going to show me what are those three different places. The first place is inside the constructor of bank account class, and that is not problematic. We said that we can change this inside the class itself. So now let's check these remaining two references. Those are inside form 1, and that is outside of our bank account class, which means that it should not be allowed. No one can change the value of our balance property outside of this class. So that means that we will have problems if we try to do that. So I will double click on one of these two references, and that will take me to our deposit method and to our withdraw method. And you can clearly see this little red squiggly here and this red squiggly here, where we are trying to change balance property directly. The error says that bank account.balance cannot be used in this context because it is inaccessible. So it has been encapsulated and now you cannot change it directly anymore. So because we have encapsulated our balance property, we cannot change it directly anymore. So that brings us to the second step of encapsulation, and that would be to provide public methods that can be used in order to change the balance. But in those methods, we are also going to write all of the rules that need to be followed if you are trying to change the balance. So let's go back to our bank account class. And here I will add those methods. So I will add two methods that you can invoke in order to change the balance. One when you want to deposit money and another one when you want to withdraw money, because there are different rules that you need to follow in case that you are trying to deposit and different rules that you need to follow in case that you are trying to withdraw. So let's create those two methods. So let's first create deposit method, and it needs to be public so that it can be accessed and invoked outside of this class. And the return type of this method can be, for example, string, so that you can return some sort of message about what happened. In case that everything went okay, you can return, for example, deposit completed successfully. And in case that some error happened, then you can return the notification that an error has happened. So here I will say public string, and the name of the method will be deposit. Okay. And the method will receive one parameter of type decimal, and that is going to be the amount that you are trying to deposit. So decimal amount. And here we are going to write all of the rules that need to be followed and all of the checks that we need to do before depositing money. And if all of those rules are fulfilled, then we can deposit money and return success message. But in case that any of those checks, any of those rules fail, then we will simply return error message. So the first rule that I will check is if this amount here is valid amount. So in case that this number here is less than or equal to 0, you cannot deposit $0 or less than $0. So in that case, we will return an error. So here I will say if amount is less than or equal to 0, in that case, I simply want to return an error message. And here I will say you cannot deposit $0. Or even better, instead of hard coding 0 here, let's write the actual amount that we are trying to deposit. So in case that this rule here is not fulfilled, we return an error message. Now let's check some other things. For example, in any bank nowadays, if you are trying to deposit a large sum of money, banks will need to perform different checks because they need to comply with anti-money laundering laws. So for example, if you're trying to deposit $1 million, bank needs to ask you, how did you make this money? Did you steal it? Did you kill someone? Did you make it by selling some illegal substances, terrorism, and so on? There are many bad ways to make money, so they need to make sure that you have a legal origin of your money. So if you inherited your money, bring us the proof. If you sold your car or your house, then bring us the proof so that we know what is the origin of your money. So those are some rules that you need to follow as well when you are trying to deposit money. In most banks nowadays, that limit is between $15,000 to $20,000, and in some banks it is even less. So if you're trying to deposit any more money than that, you will run into a problem that will not be allowed. So let's also add that check into our deposit method. Here I will say if the amount is greater than, let's say, 20,000, well, in that case, I will return an error message saying AML deposit limit reached. Here, let's say AML deposit limit reached, like this. So it is not allowed to deposit more than this. Now, there are many more rules that we could write here, but since we are not learning about banking and we are learning about encapsulation, for demonstration purposes, this is enough. So let's say that these are two rules that we want to check. And in case that these two are okay, then we are going to allow the deposit of this amount. So after we run these two checks, if they don't result in an error, then we can deposit money and change our balance. So then I can say balance plus equals to amount. And after I have changed the balance, I will return a success message saying deposit completed successfully, like this. So this is how our deposit method should look like. And this is how you implement encapsulation. Once more, this property here is encapsulated, which means that it is private. It cannot be changed directly. We have done that by making its setter to be private. And then the only way to change it will be through this method. But if you invoke this method, you will need to comply to all of these rules. And only if you do, only if all of these rules are followed, then you can change the balance. So that is deposit method. Now let's also create withdraw method, and it is going to be very similar, but we will just follow different set of rules. So I will call it withdraw. like this, it is also going to return a string, and that string can be either success message or an error message, and it will also receive the amount that you are trying to withdraw. And here we are going to write the rules. So if you are trying to withdraw less than or equal to 0, then I will simply return an error message saying you cannot withdraw, and then the amount that you are trying to withdraw. So either 0 or a negative number. And then the second rule, let's say that if the amount that you are trying to withdraw is greater than the balance. So if you are trying to withdraw more money than you have, that should not be allowed. So in that case, I will also return an error message saying you don't have enough money, like this. Now, there are many different rules that you can write here. For example, if the ATM doesn't have enough money, then you will return an error message, or if you have reached your daily limit or limit per transaction, and so on. So here you can put all of the rules that need to be followed. And only when you make sure that you have followed all of these rules, only then you can change the balance and subtract this amount, and here you will return a success message. So you will say withdraw completed successfully, like this. So this is how you implement encapsulation. Once more, this balance property is encapsulated. To be more specific, its setter is encapsulated, which means that you cannot change its value directly, but you need to go through these two methods. And in these two methods, we have different rules that you need to follow if you want to change the value of balance. So now let's go back to the code behind of our form, and let's see how we can use this. So here and here, instead of changing the balance directly, we will need to invoke those two methods that we have created. So for deposit button click, I will simply say selected bank account dot deposit, and to this method I am going to pass the value of this amount numerical, because that is the amount that we are trying to deposit. And as we already know, this method is going to return a message. So let's store it inside a variable. Let's say string message. So whatever is returned from this method, it will be stored inside this variable. So once I have completed everything that I need to do, I will simply show it inside message box. So I will say message box dot show, and I will show this message. So it is either going to be a success message or an error message. Either way, I want to notify my user so that he knows what happened. Okay, so that is what we need to do inside deposit button click. And then inside withdraw button click, we will do the same, but we will just invoke withdraw method. So let me copy this part of the code and I will paste it here. And instead of invoking deposit method, I will invoke withdraw method. And then again, after I have refreshed the grid and cleared the value of my amount numerical, I will simply show this message like this. Okay, so that is all that we need to do. Now let's start our application and let's test this. So I will add a bank account. Let's say Elon Musk, create account. Let's say Saldina, that is my account. Okay, so if I try to deposit, let's say 1500, that is going to be completed successfully, no problems. But if I try to deposit, for example, 21,000, and I click on deposit, as you can see, it says AML deposit limit reached, which means you cannot deposit this much money without proving what is the origin of this money. Okay, and then if I click on Elon Musk, for example, and I try to withdraw, let's say $56, but he doesn't have any money, again, I will get error message which says you don't have enough money, which is weird for Elon Musk. But those are the rules that we have written in our code. So we have encapsulated this balance property and we have made its setter to be private, which means that it cannot be changed directly anymore outside of this class. It can be changed only inside this class. And inside the class, we have provided two methods. withdraw and deposit, and those two methods are used to change the balance. But in those two methods, we have also written rules that you need to follow if you want to change the balance. So now you can write all of those rules here inside these two methods. And if I go to the code behind of our form, and even if I remove this check here, this part where we are checking that amount numerical value is greater than 0, if I remove it from here and also from here, that is not going to be a problem in our application, because once more, all of the rules that need to be followed when you are changing the balance, all of those rules are encapsulated in our class inside those two methods. So let's start our application once more and let's test that everything works fine. So let's add Elon Musk and let's also add me like this. So if I select Elon Musk and I try to deposit, for example, -$5, as you can see, it says you cannot deposit -$5. That doesn't make sense. And then if I try to, for example, deposit $25,000 and I select Elon Musk, again, we will get a problem. So anti-money laundering deposit limit reached. So only if I follow all of those rules, then the deposit and withdraw will be completed successfully. So Saldina, and then let's say 150. I try to deposit that. As you can see, it says deposit completed successfully. If I try to withdraw, for example, 250, that will not be allowed. But if I try to withdraw $80, in that case, it is going to withdraw money successfully. So I hope that this video helped you to understand what is encapsulation and how to use it. If you have any questions related to this video or any questions related to my practical programming course, leave those in the comment section and I will reply. And if you have any topics that you would like to see in the future, also let me know in the comment section. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video where we are going to learn about inheritance, which is also another important OOP concept. So I will see you in that video. Bye! Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will teach you about inheritance in object-oriented programming, and you will learn how to implement it in practice, as well as some common errors and mistakes that beginners make. In the previous videos, we started building this application. So in this video, I'm going to explain what we have created so far, and then we are going to learn what is inheritance and apply our knowledge about inheritance in order to add some new functionalities to this application. Hey there! If your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back. No questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. So let me show you the application that we currently have, and then I will show you what we want to achieve. So let's start our application. By the way, if you want to download my code and if you want to have the same project that I have here, in the description I will leave a link to my GitHub repository so that you can download this same application that I currently have. So this is the application that we have built in the previous videos. And here, if I enter owner, let's say Saldina, and I say create account, a bank account for that owner will be created. This is the name of the owner, account number, and then balance is initially 0. Let's add another bank account. Let's say Elon, create account. So another bank account will be created. And here we have deposit and withdraw functionality. So if I select a bank account and I enter the amount, let's say 100, and I say deposit, that amount will be deposited to my balance. And then also if I select that same bank account and I say, for example, 50, but this time I click on withdraw, that amount will be subtracted from my balance. So this is the application that we currently have. And now I will show you what we want to achieve and the functionalities that we want to add to this application. Here is finished application that we want to build. And you can already notice that there is a difference between this application and this application that we have currently. And the difference is in this field here. This application that we want to build has an additional field called interest rate. And what we want to achieve is we want to have two different types of bank accounts. We want to have a normal regular bank account, and then also we want to have a savings bank account. So now let me show you what is the behavior of this application that we want to implement. So if I enter here owner, let's say Saldina, and I don't enter interest rate, I just say create account. In that case, a normal regular bank account will be created. But if I enter owner and I also enter interest rate, let's say 2%, this time when I click on create account, this here will be savings bank account, which gives you additional 2% of interest on your savings. Now, this savings bank account has the same properties as a regular bank account. So it also has owner, account number, and balance, and it also has the option to deposit and withdraw money. So basically, savings account has everything the same as a regular normal bank account, plus one special thing, and that is interest rate. So why is this important? Well, it is important because if you select a regular bank account and you want to deposit, for example, $50, when I say deposit, that amount will be deposited to my balance. But if I select savings bank account and I want to deposit $50, in that case, I will get $50 plus 2% of interest. Now, in real life, banks will not give you this interest money immediately when you deposit your money. Instead, you will need to keep your money in your savings account for a year, for example, and only after that period you can get your interest money as well. So the reason why I implemented this functionality so that it gives you the interest money immediately instead of after a year of saving is because we want to learn programming right now and we want to see how our functionalities work instead of waiting for a year. So this here is really bad example if you want to learn about banks and how money works, because banks will definitely not give you this interest money immediately, but it is also a good example if you want to learn programming and if you want to understand what is inheritance. So let's explain what is inheritance on this example here. We already said that in our application we have bank account class, and bank account class has owner, account number, and balance, those three properties. And now what we want to do is we want to add a different type of bank account called savings account, and that savings account will have absolutely the same properties as a regular bank account. So it will also have owner, account number, and balance, plus one additional property, and that is going to be interest rate. So how would you create savings account class? There are two ways to do it: without inheritance and with inheritance. And now I will show you both of these approaches in practice. So let's stop our application, and here to our project, what I want to do is I want to add new class called savings account. So let's right click on the project and click on add new item. And here I want to select class and I will call it savings account. Like this. So savings account and click on add. This is our savings account class, and let's change it to be public like this. And as I said, savings account will have everything the same as bank account class has, plus one additional property, and that is interest rate. So there are two ways to implement that. The first way would be without inheritance, and that would be the following. So I will go to my bank account class and I will copy all of these properties that bank account has, so owner, account number, and balance. And then I will go to my savings account and I will paste them here, and then I will add additional properties that are specific to savings account, and that is interest rate. So let's add interest rate. Let's say public decimal interest rate, like this, and it is going to have a regular getter and setter, like this. So this here is one way to create your savings account class so that it has the same properties as bank account class, plus this one additional property. This here is one way to do things, but this is not the proper way, because in programming you should really avoid copying and pasting your code unless it is absolutely necessary. So now let me show you how we can do this in a better way with the help of inheritance. So when you are creating savings account class, instead of copying these three properties from our bank account, what you can do is you can simply say that savings account will inherit from bank account, like this. So you simply put these two dots, so column sign, and then you write the name of the class that you want to inherit from. And in this case, you will not need to copy these properties from our bank account class. So once more, this here is called child or derived class, and then this here is called base or parent class. And what inheritance means is that our child class is going to inherit everything, so all of the properties and all of the functionalities from its parent class, and then here you can add the properties and functionalities that are specific only to your child class. And with this, we have implemented inheritance. But if you're a beginner, then you will probably be confused by this red squiggly here. So why do we still have this error? Well, if you read the text of this error as a beginner, you will probably not understand what it means. So now let me explain why do we still have this red squiggly. The reason why we have this error is because this class here does not have a proper constructor. So now let's create a constructor for savings account class. In one of the previous videos of this series, I already explained what are constructors and how to use them. So in case that you skipped that video, I will link it here and also in the description. So make sure to watch it, because now we will just implement the constructor without repeating what I have already explained in that video. But if you want to learn in more detail about constructors, then make sure to watch that video. It will be linked in the description. So let's create a constructor. Let's say public savings account. And as soon as I add this constructor, you will notice that the little red squiggly that we had here, it has disappeared. And that is because we have created a constructor. But we still have this red squiggly here because this is not the proper constructor that we need. So now let's create a proper constructor. So now the question is, what are we missing here? So what do we need in order to create savings account? Well, we need to enter owner's name and interest rate. And we will receive those two things as parameters in our constructor because the user is going to enter them on the form. So then I will pass them as a parameters to my constructor. So I will have string owner and then decimal interest rate, like this. Let's just make this to be camel case. So decimal interest rate and owner, those are going to be two parameters that I need to receive inside my constructor. So based on these two parameters, I can create my savings account. But here comes another error, another mistake that many beginners make, and that is the following. Because we have created this inheritance, that means that our savings account class has access to all of the public properties of its base class. So that means that here I can say owner will be equal to this parameter here. And even though I don't have this owner property inside my savings account, I have still inherited this property from my parent class. So here I can access it. And I can also access other properties of my base class. So I can say account number will be equal to GUID.number. new GUID like this, and I can initialize this property as well. But just because you can do this, it doesn't mean that you should do it, because there are many problems that can happen if you try to initialize your properties and your classes in this way. And in order to avoid all of those problems, now I'm going to show you what is the proper way to create a constructor for this class. In programming, there is one very important rule which says that each class should initialize and construct only its own properties. So that means that in our case, savings account should only initialize this property. This is the only property that truly belongs to savings account. And then bank account should take care of initializing and constructing the properties that belong to this class. And these two are the properties of bank account class. So we should not initialize them in the constructor of our savings account. So inside this constructor, the only thing that we need to initialize is interest rate. So interest rate will be equal to this parameter that we have received here. So interest rate is the only thing that we should initialize inside this constructor. And then owner and account number and balance, those should be initialized in the constructor of the base class. So what I need to do is here, when this constructor is invoked, I will also say that base constructor should be invoked as well. And since our base constructor receives owner as a parameter, I will pass that to my base constructor. So if I go to bank account, you will notice that this constructor here, it receives the owner of the bank account, and then it initializes these three properties. So owner, account number, and balance. Those are the properties that belong to bank account, and it should take care of initializing its own properties. And then our savings account will initialize the interest rate, and it will just invoke base constructor and pass the things that are necessary for the base constructor. So this here is the proper and correct way to implement the constructor of a child class. So once more, child class will initialize only its own properties, and then it will invoke the constructor of the base class or parent class and pass the parameters that are necessary for the base class itself. And you can invoke that base constructor by doing this. And then inside these parentheses, you will pass the parameters that are necessary for the base constructor. So with this, we have implemented inheritance between these two classes. We have our child class, which inherits from its parent class. And then here we have one property that is specific to the child class itself. And here we have the constructor of the child class, which is going to initialize its properties. And then we are also invoking the constructor of the base class, and we are passing the properties of the base class into the base constructor. So now let's go to the user interface of our Form 1. And here I want to add a control where I can enter the interest rate. So let's move this button. And what I want to add is going to be a label and then a numerical control. So here I will open Toolbox and I will find label control, drag and drop it onto my form, so here. And then also I want to add numerical up-down control, so let's find that as well. It is numeric up-down, and let's drag and drop it here, like this. So I will change the text of this label, right-click on it, go to Properties, and the text will be interest rate. And here let's put the percentage sign inside these parentheses like this. And then I also want to change the name of this control here. So right click on it, go to Properties, and the name property will be, let's call it interest rate num. So interest rate numerical like this. This is the name that we will use in our code to access this control, and let's just make it a little bit bigger, like this. Okay, so now we can enter owner and interest rate. By the way, for this numerical field, we already have this default validation here, which says that maximum number that you can enter into this field will be 100, and then minimum number will be 0. So in case that you want to change that, you can change it here. For me, this is perfectly fine. So minimum interest rate will be 0, and then maximum interest rate will be 100. So now let's implement this functionality so that when the user enters just the owner, we will create a regular bank account. And when the user enters both owner and interest rate, in that case, we will create savings bank account. So let's see what is happening when we try to create new account. I will double click on this button, and that is going to open its event handler. So this is the code that will be executed when we try to create new account. Here we first check if the owner text is null or empty, which means if the user has entered the name of the owner, because if this here is null or empty, then we will simply return because we cannot create a bank account without the owner. But if this here is not null or empty, then we will proceed and we will execute this part of the code. So we will create a new bank account with this owner, and then we are going to add that bank account into our bank accounts list, and then we will refresh our grid. And this method, refresh grid, it does these two things. It simply sets the data source of the grid to null, so it clears it, and then it sets it to this list here, which contains all of the bank accounts that we currently have. So that is going to refresh our grid, and then we will simply clear this owner text control. So now let's see how we can determine if we want to create a regular bank account or savings bank account. So here, before we create a regular bank account and add it to our list, we also want to check if the user has entered interest rate, because if he has entered interest rate and the owner text, in that case, we will not create regular bank account. In that case, we will create savings bank account. So let's do that here. Let's say if interest rate numerical value is greater than 0, in that case, what I want to do inside these parentheses is I want to create savings bank account and add it to this list. Else, which means that if this interest rate numerical value is not greater than 0, then the user wants to create a regular bank account. So I will put this code here inside these parentheses, like this. So here will be creation of savings bank account, and then here will be the creation of regular bank account. So let's add the code here. I will say savings account, and let's call it savings account. So I want to create a new savings account, and here I need to pass two parameters. I need to pass owner text box text, that is going to be the name of the owner, and then also I need to pass the value of my interest rate, like this. Okay, so after I have created savings account, then I need to add it into my bank accounts list. So here I will say bank accounts.add, and what I want to add is this savings account here. So now this code here will be used to check which type of bank account we want to create. So if we want to create regular bank account, or if we want to create savings account, and then it will create that specific bank account and it will add it to this list here. And now I just want to make this code a little bit shorter, so I will not change the functionality. I will just make the code a little bit easier to understand. So instead of creating this account and then adding it to the list, I can do that inside the same line. So here I can say bank accounts.add, and then I can create this bank account and add it in the same line, like this. So bank accounts.add, what do you want to add? Well, I want to add new savings account with these two properties that will be used in order to construct that account. And please don't forget two parentheses here. Okay, so in that case, I don't need these curly brackets, and I will do the same inside this else block. So again, bank accounts.add. What do I want to add? Well, I want to create a new bank account, and this will be passed to the constructor, and that object will be added to my list. So then I also don't need this line, and I don't need these two curly brackets, like this. So this is a small trick that I wanted to show you and teach you how you can make your code shorter and easier to understand. The functionality has still stayed absolutely the same, but this is just a shorter way to write the same thing. So now, after we have created and added appropriate bank account into our list, we are going to refresh our grid, and then we will clear this property. And also one more thing that I want to clear is going to be the value of our interest rate. So here I will say interest rate numerical.value will be equal to 0, so that I clear that also, so that user experience is better. So that is all that we need to do. And now let's start our application and let's test how this works. So if I enter owner Saldina and I say create account, this here is going to be a regular normal bank account. But if I enter here, for example, Elon, and I also add interest rate, this time when I say create account, this account is going to be savings account. Now, since we currently cannot see any difference between a regular bank account and a savings bank account, you maybe don't even trust me that this is regular bank account and this is savings bank account. So let me prove that. Let's close our application and let's go to our savings account class. And here inside the constructor, when I'm constructing the base part of my savings account and I'm passing the owner, what I want to do is I also want to pass some additional text. So I will say owner plus, and here let's add these little parentheses, and here we can say, for example, S for savings. So this way we will know which is regular bank account and which is savings bank account. So let me start the application again. So now if I say Saldina and I click on create account, this here is a regular bank account. But if I say Elon and here I enter some interest rate, for example 3%, when I say create account, as you can see here it says Elon, and then inside these parentheses, we have letter S, which indicates that this here is savings bank account. And what would be better, instead of just having this S inside parentheses, is to have the actual interest rate. So let's do that. So here, instead of passing this S, I will just open parentheses like this, and then I will say, please pass the interest rate itself, and then let's close parentheses, and here I will add this percentage symbol. So now if I start the application and I add, for example, Elon with the interest rate of 2, when I create that bank account, here you will see Elon and then 2%, indicating that this here is savings account. And then if I add, for example, just Saldina without the interest rate, this here is going to be a regular normal bank account. So now our child class is inheriting all of the properties that our base class has. So owner, account number, and balance. And we have implemented that with the help of inheritance without having to copy our code from one class and then paste it inside another class. And here you can notice how our savings account class looks like. It is very clean and it has only those properties that are specific to the savings account itself, and then everything else is inherited from bank account. And that also means that deposit and withdraw functionalities are also inherited, which means that now we can deposit and withdraw money to our savings account as well, the same way that we can deposit and withdraw money from our regular bank account. So now if I try to deposit some money to my regular bank account, let's say $50, and I click on deposit, that amount will be deposited to the balance. And the reason for that is because the code is implemented inside the bank account class itself. If I open that class, you will notice that inside it, we have deposit functionality and we also have withdraw functionality. But if I try to do that same thing for my savings account, so I have selected savings account, and here I try to deposit $50, as you can see, that money will be deposited to the balance, but please notice that inside our savings account, we don't have deposit method. That method has been inherited from its parent class. And that is the reason why deposit functionality works absolutely the same for savings account and for regular normal bank account. Once more, that is thanks to inheritance, because savings account has inherited all of the properties and all of the behaviors, so all of the methods from its parent class. So I can also withdraw money from both of these accounts and it will also work. So if I try to withdraw money from this regular bank account, let's say 25, withdraw, as you can see, that money will be subtracted from the balance. And then I can do the same from savings account. So 25, withdraw, and as you can see, that amount will also be taken from my savings account. So this is how inheritance works and how you can implement inheritance in your code. So basically you create a child class and that child class inherits from its parent class, which means that it has absolutely the same properties and the same behavior as the parent class itself. And then you can add some additional properties or some additional methods or behaviors to your child class. But something that I demonstrated in the beginning of this video is that we want to have a behavior that is a little bit different between our base class and our child class, and that is deposit functionality. So deposit functionality should behave differently in base class and it should behave differently in child class. So for base class, it should deposit exactly the amount that you have entered, but for savings account, it should deposit that amount plus the interest. And that is something that you cannot implement with inheritance alone. In order to implement this functionality in the most correct way, in a proper way, you need to learn about an additional OOP concept, which is called polymorphism. So in the next video of this series, I will teach you about polymorphism and how it works in practice. So I hope that this video helped you to understand what is inheritance. If you have any questions about this topic or any questions about my practical programming course, let me know in the comment section and I will reply to your questions. And if there are any topics that you would like to see in the future, also let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up so that I know to create more videos like this one in the future. So thank you very much for watching and I will see you in the next video of this series, which will be here on the screen. Bye! Hi guys and welcome to my channel. In this video you are going to learn about polymorphism in object-oriented programming and how to use it in practice. This video is part of a series where I teach you about practical object-oriented programming, and in this video we will continue building the application that you can see here and that we started building in one of the previous videos. So now I will explain the application that we currently have and the code that we have written, and then we are going to learn what is polymorphism and how we can use that knowledge in order to add additional functionalities to our application and how we can apply that knowledge in practice. Hey there! If your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back. No questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. So let's start by explaining the application that we have here. And if you also want to download the same code that I have and continue working with me on this application, I will leave a link in the description to my GitHub repository, so there you can download this entire project that I have here. This application is used in order to manage bank accounts, and currently we have the following functionalities. We can create new account and add it to this grid, or we can deposit or withdraw money from one of these existing bank accounts. Currently, we have two different types of bank accounts in our application. This here is regular normal bank account that has owner, account number, and balance. And then this here is savings bank account, which also has owner, account number, and balance, plus one additional property, and that is interest rate. In this case, interest rate is 2%. Currently, we can deposit and withdraw money from both of these accounts. For example, if I select this regular bank account and I say 100 and click on withdraw, that amount will be subtracted from my balance, and we will get the same behavior for our savings account. So if I select savings account and I enter 100 and click on withdraw, that amount will also be subtracted from the savings account. So when we are withdrawing money from both of these, we will get the same behavior, and that is okay. Additionally, we also have deposit functionality. So currently, if I select this normal regular bank account and I enter, for example, 100 for the amount, and I click on deposit, $100 will be deposited to my balance. And then also, if I select this savings account and I enter 100 and click on deposit, again, $100 will be deposited to my balance. But this is not the behavior that I want. What I want instead is, in case of a savings bank account, if I'm trying to deposit $100, then I shouldn't get just $100. I should get $100 plus the interest. So if the interest rate is 2% and I'm trying to deposit $100, then I should get $100 plus 2. If I'm trying to deposit $1,000, then I should get $1,000 plus $20 of interest, and so on. So that is the behavior that I want. So basically, I want to have different behavior for regular normal bank account and different behavior for savings bank account, even though I am invoking the same functionality. And this is called polymorphism. So polymorphism as a word comes from Greek language, and it means multiple forms. So it is the ability of an organism to have multiple different forms or multiple different behaviors depending on the situation. This concept, this idea of polymorphism exists everywhere in nature. It exists in biology, in physics, chemistry, medicine, and also in programming. Now, before we start writing any code and implementing polymorphism, let's try to understand the situation that we currently have in code and what is the relationship between these two different types of bank accounts. So currently, if I open my Solution Explorer, we have a class called bank account, and that class has three properties. It has owner, account number, and balance. And then here is the constructor. So it receives one parameter, that is owner's name, and we use that in order to initialize the owner property of this class. And then we generate new GUID for the account number, and we set balance to be 0. We already learned about constructors in a separate video, which I will link here and also in the description, so make sure to watch that video. So this here is the constructor. And then we have two methods. We have deposit And also we have withdraw. So deposit method is used in order to deposit money to the account. So we receive amount that the user wants to deposit, and then we check if that amount is less than 0. If it is, we return this error message, because you cannot deposit, for example, -$2 or -$5. That does not make sense. So we check that, we return error message. And then we also check if the amount is greater than 20,000, because most banks will not allow you to deposit huge amounts of money because of different anti-money laundering laws. So in case that the user is trying to deposit a lot of money, again, we will return error message. So only after we complete all of these checks, we can deposit that money and add it to our balance. And in that case, we are going to return this success message. So that is how deposit method works. And then withdraw method works similarly. So again, we perform different checks in order to make sure that the user is not trying to withdraw less than 0 or more money than he has on his balance. So once we complete all of these checks, then we can withdraw money and subtract it from our balance, and then we return this success message. So that is how our bank account class looks like. And then we also have another class called savings account. And that class looks very simple and very small. So savings account class is inheriting everything from bank account, which means that it will have absolutely the same properties and the same behaviors that bank account has, plus it will have something that is specific to savings account, and that is interest rate. So the way inheritance works is that savings account is called child class or derived class, and then bank account is called parent class or base class. Now, child class is going to inherit everything from the parent class, which means that it will have all of the properties and all of the behaviors that parent has, plus it can have some extra. So it can have some properties or behaviors of its own. And in this case, that is this property here. So savings account has one additional property, and that is interest rate. But all of the properties that we already have inside the parent and all of the behaviors, it has those too. So this means that savings account deep down is also a bank account, because it has all of the properties, all of the behaviors, the same as bank account, plus something extra. So depending on a situation, you can either treat it as a regular bank account or as a savings account, which is a special type of bank account. And that is the reason why we don't have to implement deposit and withdraw methods for our savings account, because it is inheriting those from its parent. And that is also the reason why the behavior is absolutely the same. So it has inherited the same behavior of withdrawing and depositing that its parent class has. Now, inheritance is super useful because it allows us to inherit all of the properties and all of the behaviors between classes without having to copy and paste the code. And also it allows us to create this hierarchy between classes. But the problem begins when we want to have different behavior in child class for a method that is already implemented and that is inherited from the parent class. And in this case, that is deposit method. So basically what we want to do is we want to have different behavior of child and parent when we try to deposit money. And that is where we use polymorphism. So we can basically override a method that already exists in the parent class, and we can provide different implementation of that method in the child class. So it's the same as in real life. You know how kids always want to have their independence, they want to make their own decisions? Well, it's the same in programming. What child class can do is it can override a method that exists inside the parent class, and it can provide its own behavior, its own implementation of that method. In our case, that means that savings account can have its own behavior for depositing money, and then bank account can have its own behavior. So now let's see how we can achieve that. There are 3 things that we need to do, so let's go step by step. So first, the method that we want to override is deposit method from our bank account class. So let's open bank account class and let's find deposit method. I'm going to copy it and I will go to savings account and I will paste it here. So now let's see what are the changes that we want to make. So what is that different behavior that we want to have inside this child class when we are depositing money? So these checks that we have in the beginning of our deposit method, they can stay, they are okay for savings account as well. And then this part here, balance plus equals to amount. This part is okay for bank account, so for the parent class. But for the child class, for savings account, what we also need to add here is amount and also interest amount. So something like this. So when we are depositing money for savings account, we are adding amount and also interest to our balance. So now we need to calculate this interest amount. So let's see how we are going to do that. So let's create a decimal variable here. I will call it interest amount. And the formula to calculate this interest amount is the following. So interest rate divided by 100 and then multiplied by the amount that we are trying to deposit. So this here is going to give us the interest amount. So to explain this on an example, let's open a calculator. So in case that we are trying to deposit $100 and interest rate is 2%, let's see what is going to be the interest amount. So 2% divided by 100, that is going to be 0.02, and then we multiply that by the amount that we are trying to deposit. So that is $100. So in that case, the interest amount is going to be $2. So in that case, we are depositing amount, which is 100, and interest amount, which is 2. So in total, we should add $102 to our balance. So that is how this formula here works, and that is the change that we wanted to implement inside deposit method of our child class. That is the first step. The second step is inside our child class, we need to say that we actually want to override this method because it already exists inside our parent. So you simply say here, public override, like this. That is the second step. And then the third step is that the parent actually needs to allow for this to happen. So I will go to the bank account class, and here for this deposit method, what I need to do is I need to say that this method is virtual. So here, when I say virtual, that means that in case that child provides its own version for this method, then use that version. But in case that it doesn't, then please use this version here. So once more, inside the parent, we need to make that method to be virtual, which means that the child can override it and provide its own version that will be used. But also, in case that the child does not override it and does not create its own version, then this version here will be used as a fallback. So this method here is going to be virtual inside the parent, and then inside the child, we have that method, but we need to specify this override keyword. And here in the implementation, we can provide the version that we want to use inside the child class. So those are the steps that we need in order to implement polymorphism. And then there is one more extra step, but it doesn't have anything to do with polymorphism. Instead, it has to do with encapsulation that we have implemented in one of the previous videos. So I will link that video here and also in the description. Make sure to watch it if you already didn't. And that is related to this error that we have here. So why do we have this red squiggly under our balance property? Well, the reason is the following. This balance property is a property that belongs to our parent class. And if I open the parent class, you will notice that balance property has a private setter, which means that its value can be set or changed only inside this class here. So now when we are trying to change it inside the child class, that is the problem, and that is why we are getting an error. Now, one way to fix this problem is to simply remove this private keyword, and if I go to my savings account, this error here should disappear. Okay, so that is one way to fix it, but that is not correct way to fix it, because what we have done now is we have completely destroyed our encapsulation, and now this balance property can be accessed anywhere. So inside this class, inside the child class, and inside any other class, because now by default it is public. So that is not the solution. And what is the solution instead is, instead of using private access modifier, what you can do is you can use protected. And what protected means is that this property here, you can set its value inside this class and then inside its derived classes. But you cannot do it anywhere else. So only inside this class and inside its children. So if I go to savings account, as you can see, our error has disappeared again, and we have not broken our encapsulation, but we have fixed the problem that we had here. So this is an interesting tip that has nothing to do with polymorphism, but it is still very useful to know, and it will probably be handy for you in some situation in the future, so I wanted to share it. So now that we have implemented polymorphism, let's start our application and let's test how this works. So let's add a bank account, let's say Salvina, and I will create this bank account. This is going to be a normal regular bank account without interest rate. And then let's also say Elon, but this time I will add interest rate, let's say 2%, and create account. Okay, so now let's test our deposit functionality. So if I try to deposit money to this normal regular bank account, let's say $100, and I click on deposit, as you can see, $100 was added to the balance. Now let's see if we will get different behavior for this savings account. So select savings account, and then let's also add $100, and let's click on deposit. And as you can see, to the balance was added the amount and also the interest amount. So even though we added the same money to both of these accounts, here we still have 100, and then in our savings account we have 102. So this means that our deposit functionality works differently for different types of bank accounts. And one more thing that is very important for you to see in order for all of this to click together is what actually happens when we click on this deposit button. So now let's see that. Let's go to the design of our form and let's double click on this button. Okay, so here is our deposit button click event handler. So what we are doing here is we first make sure that we have selected just one row in our bank accounts grid. And then from our bank accounts grid, we take from the list of all of the selected rows, the one with the index of 0, that is the first one and the only one that we have selected. And from it, we take the actual item and we convert it into bank account. So in this variable here, we will have the bank account that we have selected in our grid. And this here can be a regular normal bank account, or it can be savings account. Now, what is very important and interesting here is that we can use this bank account class in order to store an object of both bank account and also savings account. So because savings account is inheriting from bank account, that means that deep down in the background, it is also bank account itself. And thanks to the polymorphism, what we can do is we can use an object of the base class in order to store the base class itself or any of the child classes. And in the runtime, once we have the actual bank account or savings account, our compiler will determine which deposit method to invoke depending on the type of bank account. So in our code, we treat it as a bank account, a normal regular bank account. But once we have the actual data and the actual account, our compiler will determine if it is savings account, invoke this deposit method, and if it is regular normal bank account, then invoke the base deposit method. And that is the magic of polymorphism. So this here reflects the ability of an object to have different behaviors in different situations. And that means that we can write our code like this, so only once using the base class, but that object can have the behavior of any one of the child classes. So in case that you had multiple child classes that are inheriting from bank account, for example, savings account, checkings account, brokerage account, custodial account, credit account maybe, and so on. So if all of those are children of the bank account and all of them have different implementations for, let's say, deposit method, then you can write your code just once. And once you start your application and once you get the actual data, then it will be determined which implementation to invoke and which behavior that object is going to have. So to finish explaining this method, once we have our selected bank account, whether it is bank account itself or savings account, then we can take that object and invoke its deposit method and pass the amount that we want to deposit. And in the background, our computer, our compiler, is going to invoke the appropriate deposit method depending on what kind of bank account is inside this object here. And then once we have deposited the money, here we are going to store the message that was returned, whether it is success message or error message. And then we are going to refresh our grid. We will clear our amount numerical field. We will set its value to 0. And then we will show the message to our user so that he knows if some error happened or if deposit was completed successfully. Hey there! If your goal is to learn programming and start a successful career, build interesting and useful applications, and if you enjoy learning from my YouTube videos, then you should definitely enroll in my practical programming course. I will take you from beginner to expert in just a few months, and I will give you all of the support and help that you need to achieve your goals. In the course, you will work on realistic projects, you will get access to a large community of successful developers, and everything that you need to learn will be on one place. You just need to follow the plan that I have created for you. And those of you who finish the course successfully will get a special certificate that is going to open a lot of job opportunities for you. In the description, you can find a coupon code to save some money. And if you're not sure if this course is for you or not, we have 7-day money-back guarantee, which means that if you don't like it for any reason, you will get all of your money back. No questions asked. So now, instead of coming up with excuses, use this opportunity to finally learn programming and transform your life, because you really have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. So I hope that this video helped you to understand what is polymorphism and how to use it in practice. If you have any questions related to this topic or any questions about my practical programming course, let me know down in the comment section and I will reply to your questions. Also, if you enjoyed this video, if you find it useful, please give it a big thumbs up so that I know to create more videos like this one in the future. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!